Today we get to graph and analyze relationships. So whenever we are analyzing something, that means that we are looking closely or looking deeply. We are trying to interpret, understand it better. And when we talk about relationships, mathematically, what we're talking about is how two things are related to another. So how one particular piece of data or piece of information can determine what happens to something else. So what we're going to be doing today is using a graph to describe the relationship between two numerical patterns. So we have two things to look at, two tables to look at just below. It says that we're looking back, so this is kind of review, just filling in and completing a table and then making a line graph to basically represent the table above. So we have two different ones. We're going to focus on this left one first. It's yards to feet. So I'm going to complete the table first by filling in the rest of the empty boxes. So it shows me that I have 1 yard is 3 feet, which means that I would then do 2 yards times 3 to get 6 feet. So I would plug in 6 here. Well, if I have 2 yards that equals 6 feet, that means that 3 yards would equal 9 feet, 4 yards would equal 12 feet, and 5 yards would equal 15 feet. So what I'm doing each time is I am multiplying the number of yards by 3 to figure out how many feet are in it. Now I'm going to plot all of that data into the graph below. So I'm going to go over 1 on my x-axis and then up to 3 to represent that first set of data. Remember, in a table, x comes before y. Then I'm going to go over to 2 and then up to 6, and I'll plot my point here. Then over 3 up to 9, over 4 up to 12, and over 5 up to 15. Now, yesterday and the day before, we focused on line graphs, so I'm going to connect those points to show that that trend is increasing at the same rate each time I add another yard. On the one on the right, I have gallons to pints. So I'm comparing the number of gallons to the number of pints that would be equivalent to that. 1 gallon is going to be equal to 8 pints. So if I have 2 gallons, I want to multiply by the number of pints by 2 also, which means that 2 gallons is equivalent to 16 pints. Then I have 3 gallons, so I'm going to add 16 more, which is going to be 24, sorry, not 16 more, 8 more. That's why I confused myself. So I add 8 more to get 24 pints for 3 gallons. If I have 4 gallons, then I'm going to add 8 more to my pints, and that's going to be 32. And then 5 gallons would be equivalent to 40 pints. So I'm going to take all of that information from the table and plot all of that in my graph. So I go over 1 up 8, over 2 up 16, over 3 up 24, over 4 up 32, and over 5 up 40. Connect all of those points to represent and show the change as I'm increasing the number of gallons to show that my pints are increasing by 8 as well. Okay, there's 2 questions below to make sure that we understand what these graphs are showing us. So it wants us to use the graphs to find the number of feet in 7 yards. So I'm going to look at this graph and I'm going to predict where my feet will end up if I continue along this same pattern. So I'm going to switch colors here and I'm going to plot a point where 6, if I continued my pattern here, 6 yards would represent 18 feet, which means 7 yards would represent 21 feet. So 7 yards is equivalent to 21 feet. Then it also asked me to predict the number of pints in 6 gallons. So over here on my right graph, remember I was increasing by 8 pints every time I added 1 gallon. So for every 1 gallon, I add 8 more pints. So if I had 5 gallons and was at 40, I want to add 8 more to get 48 for 6 gallons. So if I extended that out, I can see that it would be 48 pints is equal to 6 gallons. Okay, On this, you actually have this paper. So we have an example at the top that's already completed for us. Notice that they kind of did the same thing here with the different colors. They extended out their graph so that they can show you where we are getting to the 16, which is the goal from this problem. So let's read it together and let's look at how what this is showing us. It says, a recipe for iced tea calls for 2 spoonfuls of iced tea mix and 10 fluid ounces of water. You followed the recipe and used 16 spoonfuls of iced tea mix. So here's what I have. I have 2 spoonfuls of tea requires 10 ounces of water. So I'm showing all of the data that came from this table right over here. And so I can see that if I had 12 spoonfuls of tea, that's going to be equivalent to 60 ounces of water. That was the last piece of data that was given to me in the problem. Now, if I continued along my graph, I can continue that same pattern where I am increasing the number of ounces that I want to add for each 2 more spoonfuls of tea, if that makes sense. So I'm increasing my tea mix by 2s. So my last set of data stopped at 12 spoonfuls. So if I go up to 14 spoonfuls, I come up and I continue that pattern, it should be at 70. If I go over to 16 spoonfuls, I go up and it should continue, and it shows me that I need 80 fluid ounces of water. So to answer the question here, I need 80 fluid ounces of water to whenever I use 16 spoonfuls of tea. Okay, here's the first one that we are doing together. It says complete the table showing the relationship between degrees Fahrenheit and degrees Celsius. Then make a line graph of the data. So here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to find a pattern between my Fahrenheit numbers. So what am I doing to get from 32 to 41, from 41 to 50? As my degrees Celsius increases by 5, what is my Fahrenheit temperatures increasing by? And it should be increasing by 9 each time. So I'm adding 9 each time my Celsius degrees go up by 5. So if I continue this table, my next value should be 59. Then my next value for 20 degrees Celsius is going to be 68. And then my next value for 25 degrees Celsius is going to be 77. So whenever I get here, what I want to do is I want to take all of my data from that table and I want to graph it onto my graph. So I'm going to remember that my X value is on top and then my Y value is on the bottom. So these are my X's, these are my Y's. So when X is 0, Y is at 32. Now notice that my Y axis is counting by 10s all along here. So plotting 32 exactly will be really difficult. So you just get as close as you can to where 32 might be located. Same thing for the next one. I go over 5 up to 41. So I'm going to put it just above that line, the 40 line. For 10, it's exactly on 50. For 15, it's 59, so it's going to be just below 60. 20 degrees Celsius is equivalent to 68 degrees Fahrenheit, so it's going to go a little bit below 70. And then 25 should be at 77, so about right here. And I want to connect these points. And now it says use the graph to estimate the temperature in degrees Fahrenheit that corresponds to 35 degrees Celsius. So if I continue along this pattern, I'm going to see that if I went over to 35 degrees Celsius, I might be, and if I want to find the exact, I can do the math. So I'm going to take my last value, 77, and I'm going to add 9 to that. So 30 degrees Celsius would be about 86, about right here. But I'm trying to get to 35 degrees Celsius. So I need to do one more step, and I need to add 9 to 86, which gives me 95. So my last point is going to end up at 95 degrees Fahrenheit when it is 35 degrees Celsius. And then it says use the graph to estimate the temperature in degrees Celsius that corresponds to 70 degrees Fahrenheit. Well, here are my degrees Fahrenheit over here. So I'm going to find 70, go over, and I have a dot that's just below the 70 mark whenever my Celsius temperature is 20 degrees. So if I am going to do an estimate to figure out about how many degrees Celsius it is when it's 70 degrees, I'm going over just slightly to the right because I want to find 20, or I want to find a number between 20 and 25 because 70 is between this line here and this line here. So the actual where it crosses over the 70 line is about 21 degrees Celsius. If you put 22, I would probably accept that because it's kind of difficult to see exactly where it crosses over. So about 21 degrees Celsius would be a good answer for that one. Okay, moving on to the next page. We have another example over here, and it talks about laps and money. So I'm going to zoom in just a teensy bit. And our problem says that a sponsor donates $8 for every 4 laps that you walk around a track. We want to complete the table and then make a line graph of all of that data. So I'm going to find that pattern in my table. I can already see that I'm increasing my laps by 4. So I'm going to continue that pattern to finish the top row. So 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, and 24. Well, if I have $8 donated for every 4 laps that I walk, then that means that if I double the amount of laps that I walk, I double the amount of money that I have donated. So it's going to be 16 here. So my pattern is I am adding 8 each time I add 4 more laps. So then I could decide, well, I'm going to walk 4 more laps from 8. I'm going to walk 12 laps. Well, that means I need to add $8 more. So 16 plus 8 is going to be 24. Then I would increase by 8 again to get 32, then 40, and then finally 48. So we're going to plot all of this onto my graph. Over 4 up 8, over 8 up 16, over 12 up 24, over 16 up 32, over 20 up to 40, and over 24 up to 48. And I'm going to connect those points. I'm going to use this graph to figure out how much money my sponsor donated when I walked 28 laps around the track. So I'm going to change my colors again. I'm going to continue this pattern so that I can show that it would be $56 if I walked 28 laps around the track. Okay, our last one, I want you to try on your own. I want you to look at this graph here. It's comparing gallons to cups, and it says use the graph to find the number of cups in 4 gallons. So try to interpret this graph and see if you can figure that out, and then answer the question, what does the ordered pair 0, 0 represent in this graph? Don't tell me the origin. Yes, 0, 0 is named the origin, but what is it representing? What are we comparing? Okay, I'm going to give you just a couple minutes, so pause this video, take a couple minutes to answer these questions, and then when you're ready, unpause to check. Okay, let's go ahead and check over the number 6 and 7 that you just did. So number 6 again says use the graph to find the number of cups in 4 gallons. So here's my gallons. I want to find 4 gallons, and I want to figure out how many cups. So if I continue this trend of increasing 8 cups for every 1 gallon, I go up 8 more for the next gallon, 8 more for the next gallon, 8 more for the next gallon. That means that at 4 gallons, I am at 64 cups. So hopefully you ended up with 64 cups for number 6. Now, when it says, what does the ordered pair 0, 0 represent? You need to understand that we're comparing gallons and cups here. So if there are 0 gallons, that means that there are 0 cups. So if there are 0 gallons, there are 0 cups. Okay, the last part for today is matching. So what we're going to do is we are going to match the phrase to the graph that it's representing. So the first one, the pink one, says you have $5 saved. What that means is you already have $5. So let's look at all three graphs and see which graphs are representing the very first point showing $5. This first one is showing $0. So we know that this one cannot be it. This one is showing $5, yes, so this one's a maybe. And this one, oh, even though it's a 5 way down here going up to 10, we talked yesterday about how this little zigzag thing means that it'd be like if I had that handlebar and I stretched it out, how I want to like stretch a shape in Google Slides or something. If I were to stretch this down, then I would have 4, 3, 2, 1, then 0. So I have $5 here. So this is a maybe, this one's a maybe. Let's read the rest of it. You have $5 saved and earn $1 each day. So I'm earning money each day, which means that my amount of money that I have is going to increase. This graph is showing decreasing. This is showing it increasing. So it's increasing $1 a day. As I go over one day, I go up $1. Over a day, up $1. So this is the graph that matches the pink one here. The yellow box says, I have $5 saved. I spend $1 each day. So here I'm at $5 and I'm spending $1. As I go over my days, I lose $1. Go over a day, I lose $1. And then that means that this last one has to match this graph. And here's why. It says that I don't have any money saved, so I'm at 0, 0, but I earn $1 each day. So for every day I earn $1, another day I earn $1. Okay, today your practice is about what we've just done. If you don't finish today, it is homework, and we will be checking it the Tuesday that we return from Easter break, so you don't have to do it tonight. You can do it tomorrow, Saturday, Sunday, or Monday, as long as it's done before you return to class on Tuesday.